Welcome to another edition of the Insider Mailbag. I'm Jared Johnson, and we have a lot of really good questions from inside the Red Raiders subscribers, so I'm going to dive right into these questions. First one comes from Tornado Watch, who asked, what do I think about Tech going to the Maui Invitational and the tournament field? And he asked, am I going? First off, I think that's great. The Maui Invitational has a great tradition. It's one of my favorite preseason tournaments or beginning of the season tournaments that's out there every year. They always have a great field, and this year is no different. So I think it's great that Tech's going. It's going to be a part of another good field. Tornado Watch even pointed out the teams that are going to be there, and so this gives you a good example of who Tech's going to be going against. Arizona, Arkansas, Cincinnati, Creighton, Louisville, Ohio State, and San Diego State, along with, of course, Texas Tech. All very good to great basketball programs, and it should be very entertaining. If Tech could get a couple wins or even make a deep run there in the Maui Invitational, then it'd probably go a long way towards the Red Raiders helping out their ranking, their resume for the tournament. But of course, we expect the Red Raiders to be in the tournament every year now with the way the program is, and these are some of the things that happen when you establish this kind of program. You have stacked this kind of success, become one of the better programs in the country. You get to go take part in great tournaments and great events like the Maui Invitational. And the last question, am I going? Well, I'd love to. I don't know if I'm going or not. Obviously, that would be a really fun time. So we'll have to see. I'll have to talk to the bosses of CBS and 24/7 Sports about that, but sure would be a lot of fun to go. All right. Next question comes from All the Smoke. He says, people are not over the way Kevin McCullar is leaving, and maybe there are reasons for that. But do I see Kevin McCullar leaving as that big of a deal, especially if it opens the door for other guys to transfer in? Yeah, All the Smoke, this is a good question. This is something that's been probably the most talked about topic on the board and just in the fan base here, for 4 or 5 days at least, if not longer. We broke it all down in a staff discussion, basically the timeline of McCullar declaring for the NBA draft and then declaring for the transfer portal, saying he wanted to keep all his options open, and then saying his top two schools were Kansas and Gonzaga. At that point, we had known for a little bit inside the Red Raiders that Kevin McCullar likely was not returning to Texas Tech, even if he didn't go to the NBA and came back to college. And then he posted a message which was, to me, was kind of a bad look, just the way it was worded and everything. I don't know if that's the way McCullar meant it, but he was basically just condemning fans for criticizing him. But quite honestly, I completely understand Tech fans being upset that a Red Raider legacy, a guy that had been a big part of the program, is considering going to a in-conference rival. Gonzaga or Arizona or Duke or whatever. It's like, okay, I get it. But going to Kansas, I mean, you just played in the Big 12 Tournament Championship. You battle them for the Big 12, every year now. Kansas won the national championship. I mean, I completely understand why Tech fans are frustrated with McCullar possibly leaving on as far as that part of it, and leaving and perhaps going to Kansas, and the way he worded everything. But so is it a big deal? Is another question you asked me, All the Smoke. And, I think it is. On one hand, Kevin McCullar's been a very good player for Texas Tech. Double-digit scorer, very good defender. I think he led the team in a couple of categories, like steals and maybe assists. I'm not sure. I can't remember. Adonis Arms may have had more assists than him. But regardless, he's been a good player for you. Him coming back last year was, I think, a really big moment for Mark Adams and team solidarity and all that. But on the other hand, McCullar's been injured a lot. I mean, he came to the program injured, coming off an injury in high school. He was injured a lot this past season. So that's been a problem. Also, he does have some offensive deficiencies. I don't think he's a very good ball handler or creator. As a point guard, to me, he's He's a 2 or a 3. He's a wing. He's a very good wing. I don't mind him being like the tip of the spear on defense in terms of out in the perimeter. I think he's great in that capacity. But offensively, he needs to be a secondary or third type scorer. A guy who finishes on the break, can get you some buckets or some kind of garbage buckets. Make some shots, don't get me wrong. But he should not be a top contender's primary scorer or primary ball handler, in my humble opinion. So, some of the guys that Texas Tech already have coming in, the Pop Isaacs, the Lamar Washingtons, the Demarion Williams, obviously Devion Harmon, those guys all appear to be better like ball handler scorer types. So, everybody's replaceable in almost every walk of life. I think, you have guys like Tom Brady, which would probably argue with that. NFL quarterbacks are pretty hard to replace, like elite ones. But for the most part, all of us are pretty replaceable. Mark Adams remains, his culture remains, his defense remains, and they're still getting talent. So I don't like it, especially if he ends up playing for an in-conference rival. I mean, that would be just a really weird thing. And, of course, there'd be a lot of hate. I mean, that's just a fact. It's the way sports are, and I understand it. But in terms of, is it going to hurt Tech's chances to win the Big 12 next year? Will it keep the Red Raiders from going to the NCAA tournament? No, it won't. Nas Raider says, what is your impression on Coach McGuire's coaching style? On game day, will he delegate and be a CEO level coach, or have direct input to the offense and defense or position groups? Yeah, I think I swear I'm not trying to dodge your question, but I think the answer is yes. He is a CEO coach. He does. I think the best description of somebody we've seen somewhat recently is Mac Brown. Now, some of y'all don't like Mac Brown because he was the coach at Texas, and I understand that. But he was a very good recruiter. He was great with people. He actually was pretty dang good on game day. Now, he made some mistakes, don't get me wrong. So many high-profile games. But, I covered a couple of those Red River rivalry, or whatever they call it now, those games against OU where you could tell his game plan that he instituted and helped execute ended up being the difference in some of those games. And you see what he's done at North Carolina and turning them around, some especially a couple years ago, and they had that great season. McGuire is a CEO type in that great salesman, has great relationships, all that. But he will make his impact on game day. He will make sure his coaches know what he wants. And will help execute during the game. I have full confidence in that. So I think the answer is both. Now, he's not a coordinator. He's not going to be calling off the offense or the defense, but he's going to have, okay, it's time we run let's establish the running game, that kind of thing. He'll have that kind of authority for sure. Okay, we need to help give the defense some rest, or, talk to the defensive coordinator in terms of we need to get more pressure on the quarterback. Those kind of things. Joe McGuire's not going to be shy about that. He's going to have his footprint on the team, both from a CEO standpoint, which we've already seen some in recruiting and just the kind of ambassador he is for the program, but then also on game day. There's no doubt in my mind. Panther Cat says, first football game in the fall. Does Tech line up on the first play with 1, 2, or no tight ends? How about 3? No, who knows? Zach Kidley is very creative as offensive coordinator. I think we're gonna see all different types of formations, which will be different than what we've seen the last couple of years. He's as likely to go empty as he is to go 12 personnel. Have 2 tight ends out there. So I'll say 1 tight end. I think best bet is probably 1 tight end. It'll probably be Henry Teeter, who has been a really good player for Texas Tech, quietly a really good player as a blocker, even as a receiver. He's had at least 2 or 3 really good springs in a row. But Mason Tharp's going to get in there. Several tight ends are going to get in and play, and they're I believe they'll make an impact on offense as receivers. Now, will the tight end be at the end of the line? Will he be in the backfield? Will he be split out in the slot? I don't know. Who knows? We'll have to see what Kidley dials up, but you're asking me, so I'll say 1. I'm sure you're going to hold it to me, Panther Cat. Whatever it is. Texan44 asks, does Coach Joey McGuire, does his popularity start to cool off with the high school kids a few years down the road? Well, I mean, I don't remember the last time, what was it, 2016 was his last year coaching or something like that? So, I mean, he hasn't been a high school coach for a while, and he's still very popular with the high school coaches, which I think is probably the most important thing, to be honest, in terms of how he's being able to reach out and have audiences with so many recruits all over the state, not just the state, but the region. So, I really don't. And beyond just the fact that Joey McGuire is a Hall of Fame high school football coach, his relationships that he's built and his whole philosophy is to build these relationships to stand the test of time, not to burn bridges when he goes somewhere else or when he goes to another level, but to always have those relationships built in with people to help people, but also, to help him out too, just to be a good person and all those things. I really believe that. I believe it's genuine with Joey McGuire, and I've said this many times, but I've had my own very small experiences with him in that vein in the past, like long time ago when I was, covering high school sports for the Fort Worth Star-Telegram, and he was a high school coach. He was very nice, very generous with his time, and anytime his name comes up, there is someone like who has a story, just similar to mine or similar to everyone else's, in how he opened his door, devoted his time to somebody and helped them out, and then the relationship that was built upon that. So that's the kind of stuff that lasts, forever, to be honest. That's how you build everlasting relationships. And I don't think that's going to change in 3 or 4 years. I think the only thing that might hurt him in terms of with recruits in that way is if he has, like, he bombs a couple of years. If he has a couple of 4 or 5 win seasons, it's going to be tough to be as popular as he is with recruits. I don't foresee that happening, but just to answer your question, that's the only thing I can see where maybe his popularity wanes a little bit with recruits. LB Mans says, does loyalty and pride for university still exist, or do players only care about chasing money? Does a 4-year letterman at university at schools exist anymore? Yeah, that's a good question. We are definitely living in different times with college sports. With the transfer portal, NIL money, the transfer waivers, that's made it easier than ever to just jump in the portal and transfer wherever you want. And so it is kind of a Wild West feel in terms of, like, the market hasn't truly been set yet. Players are just transferring all over the country, sometimes within conference, which we already talked about. There doesn't appear to be a lot of loyalty in terms of players for their school. But, I would always question that there are some players who you talk to, or ex-players, that really cares about their school, and some that don't. But the cynical part of me, let's put it this way, it had been my experience that coaches and players, when you actually talk to them for real, don't care about their team or their school near as much as the fanatics, which, I mean, by the definition, it kind of makes sense, fanatics, But that was definitely, like, early on in my journalism career, that was a major disappointment to me. Like, dang, I guess that makes sense, but that's a tough thing to learn, I think everything is really being thrown in our faces. Just some of these truths or some of these things that suspicions I had, just about how loyal are these players and coaches, not just players, to their schools and their teams. And I think another thought too is that, I mean, these people have to look out for themselves. If you're a kid and you have an opportunity to make some significant money to help yourself, your family, all that, I think you have to consider it. And I understand that. So I generally consider or think that most people are looking out for number one. But then again, I have numerous examples of people being extremely generous. So while the very public things, the newsworthy things right now are mostly about people jumping ship and going wherever, and there's a lot of truth to that. There's no debating that, in my opinion. I think there are still some guys who are loyal to their schools. I think there's some guys who they care about, like for example, for Texas Tech, the brand is the double T, but it's not as talked about, and it's definitely different. It's easier to jump in the portal and see if the grass is greener, see what your market is, see if you can go to a place that you think might be better for you, instead of the grind that you're already on at the school you're at. So. I think we're all going to learn a lot of lessons over the next couple of years, just about with the new era of college athletics. So, to be continued to answer your question. I think it does exist. I think it's different. I don't think all this is just bad, like some people say, and that's fine. Different opinions, but definitely interesting times we're living in. And the Lawrence Odiasis will still be a thing. The Jalen Hutchings will still be a thing. I think they're just not talked about near as much. Final question, and I'm not surprised to get this, and I think this is a really good way to phrase who's going to be the quarterback. Jay Mizo asks, he says, game 1 starting QB will be blank, and last game starting QB will be blank. Well, I'm going to say Tyler Shuck is going to start the opener. And I'll say Baron Morton starts the season finale. Now, that being said, I'm a huge Donovan Smith fan, so we'll have to see. Right now, for me, I like all 3 quarterbacks. But there's something about both Donovan Smith and Baron Morton that I really like. I'm very curious to see what Baron Morton's ceiling is. And I think Donovan Smith is just a winner. I think he can do a lot of things for you. Tyler Shuck, I like a lot of the tangibles. He's a little nervous in the pocket for me. A little too nervous in the pocket for me. I want to see him settle down, go through his reads, make smart, clutch plays. If he can do that, then, he's your guy. But I'll say Shuck starts the season opener, and I think Morton starts the season finale. So we'll have to see how it all plays out. But with that, great questions from Inside the Red Raiders subscribers. As always, thank you for that. Thank you for watching, and until next time.